Welcome, my name is Rafaela Basili. I'll be moderating today's event, Monitoring and Fostering Progress in Urban Road Safety. As mentioned before, please find interpretation for both Spanish and Portuguese using a button that is located at the bottom of your screen. Today's webinar consists of 3 parts. So we will start with opening remarks from Dr. Young-Tae Kim, the Secretary General of the International Transport Forum, also from Mr. Todd, President of the FIA and United Nations Special Envoy for Road Safety, and from Mr. Saul Alveano, Road Safety Director from the state of Jalisco in Mexico. Then, in the second part, my colleague Alexandre Santacreu will present the main findings of the ITF's new road safety report. And to reflect on those findings, we will continue with a panel of city representatives and road safety experts. They are calling from Vancouver, Oslo, Guadalajara, and Brussels, and I will introduce them at the start of the panel session. So I would like now to call Dr. Young-Tae Kim, Secretary General of the International Transport Forum, for his opening words. Please, Young-Tae.
Thank you, Rafaela, and welcome everybody. And ¿cómo está? And ¿cómo está? Todo el mundo. I'm very happy to present you with this webinar, the series, and we already finished 3 webinars between September and October, and this is the webinar series number 4. And this reflects the ITF publication, of which the title is Monitoring Progress in Urban Road Safety. The main author is Alexandre Santacreu. You see on the screen, handsome guy from ITF, dedicated researcher on road safety, and especially manager of Safer City, Safer Street initiative in ITF. And also Rafaela, who is moderating, is deeply involved in this project together. So I'm very happy to present you those excellent researchers. And this webinar is open to the public, and we have a translation into Spanish and Portuguese, as indicated by Rafaela, and todo el mundo en los países latinoamericanos. Espero que le gusten mucho esta webinario de hoy sobre la seguridad vial. And I'm also very happy to have Todt, my friend from Fiaa, who always supports our road safety activities in ITF, and Saul Alveano from Guadalajara, Mexico, for your time and passion for these cyber activities. And as you know well, over 1.3 million people die every year on the road, and this is a really tragic reality. And I think that road safety related activities are one of the most visible, the global cooperation activities in our daily life. And every year we publish very important and interesting the papers, ITF. So this year we launched 4 publications on road safety. In general, we publish almost 60 publications every year, and every research paper is freely downloadable from our website. Even individuals and associations can have free access to any publication, even in the past. And the first publication that we can proudly present you is Safe Micromobility. So that was also written by Alexandre Santacreu. It was really useful the research paper dealing with the new personal mobility devices of today, such as e-scooters and bicycles and e-bikes and all forms of light the transport options in cities. And we also launched Todt annual report. That's an annual paper in updated reference, which is really interesting and important also, and covering 42 countries. And we also launched best practice for urban road safety, and hundreds of participants joined the webinar also. And we took this opportunity to ask direct questions to the city officials from Buenos Aires, Bogota, Fortaleza, New York City, London, and Rotterdam. And finally, monitoring progress in urban road safety that is directly linked to today's webinar. And that's also very important, the research paper, especially funding came from the Fiaa, and for which we are very thankful and very grateful. And in fact, this road safety network in ITF has 48 cities and almost 300 different individuals participated in one of these, the network. And today we are very privileged to hear from a panel of truly exceptional guests, and all four of them are playing a big role towards eliminating road deaths in their cities and network. So once again, I thank you for your time and your interest, and we will continue to work together. And I hope that this co-work and cooperation can produce very excellent outcomes in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Yante. I would like to follow our opening now, giving the floor to Mr. Todd, President of the FIA and United Nations Special Envoy for Road Safety. Please, Mr. Todd, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening to all of you. I'm happy to speak with you and to make my little presentation from Cairo in Egypt. And I'm also pleased to see that the Safer City Streets network has significantly grown since we launched it at the UN Habitat Conference in 2016. The report which will be presented today is a concrete example of the work undertaken over the last few years, and it shows that improving safety is possible. The main reason why the FIA has been supporting Safer City Street is that we strongly believe in the vital role of cities in promoting safe and accessible mobility in the new decade. These are the places where most journeys begin and end. And the urban populations are increasing, as we all know. The community is aging, and the people are being encouraged to walk and cycle more as concerns over congestions and air pollution move up the political agenda. New forms of mobility are also emerging increasingly, leading to more users sharing the roads. Safer streets are crucial for making cities more livable. If streets are dangerous, all the efforts in promoting walking and cycling are undermined. This is also the reason why we have partnered with JCDecaux, the #1 outdoor advertising company worldwide, which makes available spaces across the network in more than 90 countries and 1,200 towns and cities. The 3,500 live campaign is translated into 33 languages and is supported by 18 ambassadors from the world of entertainment, motor racing, sport, and politics, as well as the network of the FIA member clubs worldwide. Next year, we would like to strengthen our cooperation with cities so that this campaign, which has a strong focus on protecting vulnerable road users, can be part of your strategy to reduce crashes. Cities are also a place where innovation can be advanced faster. Many have welcomed the introduction of new mobility options that have launched in just the last few years. Shared bicycle and e-bicycle schemes, shared e-scooters that can be left anywhere, app-based taxi services, bicycle and motorcycle food delivery companies. These are just a few of the services that have developed increasingly over the last decade. But policy and regulation at the national level are slow to catch up. The Safer City Street networks offer a unique platform for cities to learn from each other, understand key trends, and find the most valuable policy options to ensure a safe deployment of innovation. COVID-19 changed the way we live, work, and commute, and is also accelerating some of the urban mobility trends that were already visible. We do not have a clear roadmap ahead, but if this pandemic has proved anything, it is that the change is possible. Cultural and behavioral patterns that seemed so difficult, almost impossible to convert, have been adjusted and dissolved. Also, the policy response was robust. Imagine that governments commit themselves to road safety as they are currently doing against COVID-19. That is Vision Zero. And COVID showed us it is achievable. I'm convinced cities can play a leading role in bringing such change. But we need to pass through a cultural change. Due to historical reasons, stakeholders of the road mode, contrary to other traffic modes, never have a need to agree on the road safety culture, or to act jointly to ensure constant improvement of safety conditions and infrastructure, or to share responsibility for it. Instead of safety, road mode embedded as its core value the freedom of movement, while pushing most of the responsibility for safety down on the driver. My dear colleagues and friends, safety is a key component of achieving Sustainable Development Objectives, particularly SDG Targets 11.2, which aims to provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable for all by 2030. It is also our only route towards reaching our new global target to halve the number of road fatalities and injuries by 2030. It is clear that while the political leadership will be the driver of embracing this cultural change, it will often be up to local authorities to give concrete implementation. And here is another reason why the Safe City Street network is more than ever important today. Only measurable results provide evidence of best practice. At the core of the IETF Safer City Streets initiative is data collection to allow the definition of the most effective policies which will transit into concrete implementation on the ground. As you know, you can count on my full support as the FIA president and also as the UN Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety to bring the results of your work to all the cities, particularly in low and middle income countries that are committing to improving safety, but often lack the capacity and funding. It's something I've been doing since I arrived in Cairo yesterday, and I got a very strong support and response from the different ministers, health, interior, and transport. thanks for giving me the floor and have a great session today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Todd. So to close our opening, I would like now to call Mr. Saul Alveano for some words. Please, Saul.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Buenos días a todos y todas en México y en Iberoamérica. Bonjour tout le monde. First of all, I'm hoping you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. There's no doubt that this health crisis caught us all by surprise. Although today I do not have the pleasure of meeting you in person, I'd like to tell you how excited I am of convening with you all through this webinar. I want to thank ITF, Yontae Kim, and the team at RTAP for inviting us to this webinar and give us the opportunity to share our experience, knowledge, but also to learn from our other colleagues across different latitudes. Road safety is without a doubt increasing its importance in the public agenda around the globe. In Latin America, the work of advocates, experts, and activists seem to be finally landing into politics. Some cities have steadily been making progress in reducing serious injuries and fatalities due to road crashes. Over the last few years, we have witnessed improvements in Bogota, Fortaleza, Santiago, and Buenos Aires, just to mention a few. Sadly, some other cities have not taken this path and have even decided to go backwards, placing their bets on motorization, increasing speeds, and building even more ineffective infrastructure to move more cars, leaving people and their needs out of the equation, further increasing the gap of inequality. However, it is our duty to expand and extend the beauty of sustainable transport, the passion for saving lives, and the enthusiasm of building safer, more equal, and resilient cities. We must strengthen the evidence-based solutions that have not only saved lives, but improved the quality of life of many people. My name is Saul Alveano. I represent the Secretary of Transport from the state of Jalisco in Mexico. Jalisco is not only the land of the mariachi, where we have the best tequila in the world, the land of Checo Perez, the Formula One driver who I'm pretty sure Todd knows very well. But we're also leading by example in road safety improvements and in sustainable transport. So, from behalf of Enrique Alfaro, Governor of Jalisco, and hoping the existing health crisis will soon be over, we'd like to invite you to Guadalajara, where we will be hosting a Safer City Streets meeting in the spring of 2022. We want to be the epicenter to continue disseminating best practices among metro areas, as well as mid-sized cities in Latin America. We must continue spreading the joy of saving lives. Road safety must not be a burden to city officials, but a passion. Thank you, and see you in the spring of 2022.
Thank you very much, Saul, for this invitation. I'm sure we are all looking forward to this Safer City Streets conference in Guadalajara in 2022. So I would like now to continue our webinar. So this webinar is part of the ITF Safer City Streets initiative and celebrates the launch of a new report that is called Monitoring Progress in Urban Road Safety. We'll have the opportunity to hear from this report and discuss the main findings in just a few moments. We'll also make available the link of this report on the chat in a few moments. And I would like to invite my colleague, Alexandre, to present some of the main findings of this report. Just before we start, one quick announcement. During the presentation, please do feel free to send us questions using the Q&A tool. We will select some of them and do a quick round by the end of the presentation. Please, Alex, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rafaela, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to take you through the main findings of the report we published earlier this month, and which is called Monitoring Progress for Urban Road Safety. As already mentioned by our Secretary General, Dr. Kim, and the UN Special Envoy, Mr. Todd, this report results from the Safer City Streets initiative. And for those who are not yet familiar with it, two aspects of that program are most appreciated in the road safety community. One is the network of experts developed through 6 global gatherings so far. Members of that network represent local governments, of course, but also national authorities, research institutes, NGOs, and the private sector. Thanks to this network, the ITF developed the second aspect of the program, a global database for city-level road safety data. But very few people have the time to explore the raw data. So here is what we did with this data. In this new report, Monitoring Progress in Urban Road Safety, we track the progress made since 2010 in reducing the number of road crashes and casualties. It is the natural follow-up from the report we published in 2018, and that was translated into Spanish soon after that. At the time, in 2018, we had data for 31 cities. Now in 2020, and in this report, we include 48 cities. I'm going to show you a number of charts from this report we published. And I'd like to clarify that not every city provided a complete data set. This is the reason why you will not find precisely 48 cities on each chart. Also, please remember to use the Q&A box. If you have any question, we will get to that in a few minutes. Before I begin, I'd like to give credit to my colleague Rafaela for collecting data from cities. This work underpins the results I am presenting today. The ITF is also very thankful towards the city officials all over the world who contributed to this database, especially to Raphael in Accra from the Vital Strategies team in the Bloomberg Initiative for Global Road Safety. Accra is now the first African city to join our database. Here is the first finding. Road deaths are going down in this panel of cities at a pace of 3.2% per year. It's good news. But is that fast enough? No. We need to progress twice faster to cut road death by half in a decade, which is the target set by the United Nations. A 7% reduction each year is needed to reach that target. We remain too far from those 7%. Only 2 cities, Oslo and Warsaw, have reduced the number of road deaths by more than 7% a year over that period. The progress overall was slow and steady. There was no sign of acceleration between 2010 and 2018. You can have a look at the trend lines in the report. Now, let's not forget the goal of the Safer City Streets initiative. It is to help cities achieve faster progress in road safety. And to do so, we identify which cities have already achieved the fastest progress. This is to help cities understand what works. So this chart identifies Warsaw, Oslo, and Barcelona as the 3 cities with the fastest progress since 2010. How did they achieve that? Our new report describes some of the factors which have most likely contributed to this. And we will hear from Oslo in a minute. Which city is making progress faster than the country as a whole? We plotted data from the ITF IRTAD database. These are the black lines on the chart. And they reveal that in Calgary, Buenos Aires, New York City, and Bogota, the cities performed much better than the national trend. Our report explores the factors which may explain Calgary's performance. For the 3 other cities, we published several case studies in September, and they include Bogota, Buenos Aires, New York City, in a total of 7 cities. The report is called Best Practice for Urban Road Safety. It was mentioned by our Secretary General, and this is available on the ITF website. So we talked about cities making progress. Now, which cities are the safest now? Here is the number of deaths per unit daytime population. Why daytime, you may ask? Because in cities, the resident population does not reflect the actual level of activity. The population in Lisbon, for instance, doubles in the daytime due to people commuting to the city from further away. This chart tells a story, the story of very large performance gaps between cities. To fill those gaps, cities must learn from their peers. And in our panel today, we are privileged to have Maya Simmerbeck from the Urban Environment Agency in Oslo. Oslo, which is the safest city in our panel. It's always interesting to see what happens in different user groups. On this chart, the first 3 bars represent vulnerable road users, people walking, cycling, and riding powered 2-wheelers. The last bar represents car and truck occupants. Where do we observe the slowest progress in reducing the number of road deaths? Well, sadly, among vulnerable road user groups. If instead of death, we looked at serious injuries, what would we see? In most groups, the number of seriously injured fell in a majority of cities, but among one group, among cyclists, the number of serious injuries increased in most cities. So everybody would ask, is cycling getting more dangerous over time? We believe we should also ask, is cycling becoming more popular over time? Could that explain this observation? So to answer the question, we looked at the number of trips. The number of bicycle trips increased in most cities between 2010 and 2018. Trips on bikes actually more than doubled in Vancouver, in Auckland, and in New York City. This is spectacular. In nearly all cities, the number of trips increased faster than the number of cyclist deaths and injuries. In other words, the risk of death per trip, plotted here in blue, went down. And the risk of injury, plotted here in green, per trip also went down. This is one of the conclusions of our report. But which city is the safest for cycling? Here is the risk of being killed on a bike, controlling for the number of trips cycled. This analysis of risk per trip or per kilometer, both metrics are available in the report. It is really what makes the Safer City Streets initiative unique. We collect both casualty data and mobility data. The report looks at risk figures for cycling, you can see them on the screen, but also for walking and for motorcycling. The report includes data from a few metropolitan regions. These are labeled, these come with a label, the label FUA, or Functional Urban Area. Such areas have a footprint which can be many times larger than the footprint of the city. With high-speed roads, with higher car dependence, cycling is often much more dangerous in the metro region than in the city proper. That is something to bear in mind when looking at those results. Now, what do you see on the left-hand side of this chart? Vancouver and Copenhagen are the safest cities where to ride a bike. And I will very soon stop so that you can hear from Vancouver in a minute. There is more material that you can find in the report on the ITF website. Just to mention a few things: seatbelt use statistics, gender statistics, alternative performance indicators and road safety indicators. The report is available to download for free, and I'm stopping here to make sure we've got time to hear some of your questions, if there are any. Rafaela, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for these very interesting insights. We have no questions as of now, but I would like to remember all attendees that they can continue sending questions using the Q&A because we are going to have a second round by the end of the session today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce today's panel discussion. We'll have the opportunity to hear from exceptional road safety experts from all around the world. So let me introduce our four panelists. We have Liliana Quintero, Senior Transportation Engineer from the City of Vancouver. We also have Maya Simmerbach. She's Head of Traffic from the Oslo Urban Environment Agency. We also have Pedro Homem de Gouveia, Senior Policy and Project Manager from the Police Network, and we have Saul Alveano, Road Safety Director from the state of Jalisco. Thank you very much for joining this event and sharing your experience with others. I would like to start the panel with a question to Liliana. Liliana, some cities are trying to make their streets safer by reducing the volume of motor vehicle traffic. I know that Vancouver had a target of making walking, cycling, and public transport together to reach at least 50% of the modal share. I know that this target was achieved 4 years earlier. So my question is, what's your secret? How did you manage to do that? And what are your plans for the future? Are you planning to continue to reducing motor vehicle traffic?
Hi everyone. Hola a todos. Answering your question, thanks for the invite. Very happy to be here. Basically, this is something that has been a part of the City of Vancouver culture for many years. So in our 1997 transportation plan, we already established that we weren't going to increase road capacity. And that we would have to, we will give priority to pedestrians and cyclists and work with the space we had. So that was the base of that. And then when we updated our long-term plan, the Transportation 2040, which was in 2012, we also established the mode hierarchy, and that helped us because the idea of the mode hierarchy is that that will base all our decisions, saying that pedestrians are first, second cyclists, third transit, fourth carpooling and taxis, and fifth private vehicles. So that's the underlying base of that. And some of the key policies that we've used, which are similar to any other city, but yeah, the basic ones that we've had to get to 50% include addressing gaps in the pedestrian safety network. So yes, continuously providing opportunities for people to cross at signals every 200 meters, addressing missing pieces of sidewalk, providing accessibility, so missing pieces of curb ramps, audibles. Again, building a comfortable and safe cycling infrastructure, providing safe and reliable transit, and having policies, parking policies to make people think about if it's a good idea to have car ownership. So those are some of the key items that we've looked into. And recently, through our climate emergency action plan, our goal of 2/3 by 2040 was accelerated to 2030. So we have a much a much tougher goal because it has to be done 10 years earlier. So there's more to add to that. Lately, we went to council with these additional policies, but a lot of it underlies on more of the same. But the new policies added, including reviewing transportation pricing in our Metro Core. Our Metro Core is the downtown area plus a little bit more, but basically starting to review that, as well as a much larger package for improving walking and cycling infrastructure, and again, continue to improve bus and speed reliability. So that could be from dedicated transit lanes to more infrastructure for transit, as well as increasing the promotion of walking and cycling. That could even be expanded program for school. and as well now promoting work from home options. I think now with COVID, that's something that we've all seen. It's much more possible. And as well, continue to eliminate parking minimums and introduce parking maximums when we do a new development, and implement residential parking permits citywide. So here in Vancouver, we have a residential parking program where you pay a small fee every year to park on the street, but it's very cheap and it's only in certain neighborhoods. So the idea is that all neighborhoods would have that. So yeah, those are basically some of the key strategies that we have. But again, it's continue building on those as we go on. Right now we're at 54%, so there's still more to go, and still 10 years left.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing all this very comprehensive work you've been doing. Maya, I would like now to ask you in Oslo, because I know that your travel surveys reveal also a fast change in the mobility of your residents. The share of car trips dropped rapidly in the last years. So can you tell us what was the role of the administration in promoting this behavioral change?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's my first meeting in this expert group. I'm so excited to be here. So just like Liliana said, like a lot of cities around the world, we felt like we talked a lot for a couple of years about how we had a need to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions and about how to make our city more livable. And as it turned out, all that talking developed into two really important points of discussions that were on the national level. It was about the changing the urban trips from car to sustainable transport. And on a local level, just like in Vancouver, we established the hierarchy where the top three, of course, is pedestrians, cyclists, and public transport users. So that helps us so much in our daily work to when we have all those problems that I guess some of you will recognize, where we struggle to make room for all the different means of transportation, that we have this hierarchy to look at and to prioritize to. And I want to talk a little bit about speed limits, because from 2013 we started this yearly evaluation of our city districts, establishing zones, mainly in residential areas, where we have set the speeding limits to 30. And of course, that is really important for the people who lives there and have their kids use the streets every day. But the main effect, which I think is really important, is equalizing the cars and the car users and the cyclists, and making the cooperation between them so much better. So that has been really important. And then also, of course, the land use in the central city has been adjusted a lot. We have all the parking lots are taken away, and users today are more filling the city with lives, but it's also prioritizing groups like delivering services that rely on electric power. And we have, of course, special groups with a special need for transport in the city center. So that's been some of the things that we've been working on an administrative level.
Thank you very much, Maya, for sharing that. We are hearing a lot from Oslo in the past months because you had no fatalities among pedestrians and cyclists in 2019. So I think everyone is curious to see how you have been working to achieve such an important goal. So thank you very much. Saul, I would like now to ask you about Guadalajara, because you have defined a transport agenda very much focused on active mobility and public transport as Oslo and Vancouver. But differently, you have already 70% of walking, cycling, and public transport trips. That's a very high rate. So what type of goals, what do you want to achieve with this sustainable transport agenda?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Okay, first of all, I wanted to remind the audience that Guadalajara is the second biggest metro area in Mexico. We have around 4.5 million inhabitants spread around 9 municipalities. So everything we do or don't do impacts competitiveness. Guadalajara is one of the third largest economic cities in Latin America. So yes, we do have more than 60% in walking, cycling, or public transport. However, our goal is to maintain the modal share because our biggest risk is to lose trips that are nowadays being done by walking or cycling. Part of those trips done by public transport, let us remind that are done walking. So we need to really avoid people shifting towards motorized modes such as motorcycle or private cars. Now, the biggest challenge is to coordinate an agenda where the attributions and competences are spread out when we talk about mobility or road safety in different agencies and also different levels in municipal and state levels. I'm surprised to see that the traffic agency in Vancouver is in the environment ministry, as I heard. Now, what we have in common with the municipalities is this common ground of having established, as well as Oslo and Vancouver, that our hierarchy prioritizes pedestrians, cyclists, and public transport users. So there's a technical alignment on that. However, when we look at the available infrastructures, we must ask ourselves if those trips by walking or cycling are being done safely. How exposed are children, the elderly or young people to poor air quality? Do pedestrian infrastructure provide accessibility, good connectivity? And there are some elements that we intend to impact, once again, to avoid people shifting to motorized modes. One is to increase accessibility, not only accessibility in terms of mobility, but also in terms of accessibility to education, jobs, entertainment. By increasing accessibility, we would be reducing inequality and impacting competitiveness, as I said before. By improving connectivity, we have, for example, and now for some weeks now, we have inaugurated a third line of the light rail, and we have provided good connectivity between the light rail modes and also between the light rail and the BRT. And we want to improve, as I said before, connectivity also with the pedestrian infrastructure, which is in the municipal area. So, all this coordination with different agencies and different levels is quite hard. But once again, when you have a good technical alignment, the rest is a piece of cake. Let's put it that way. Yeah, we might have let's say, we might be back on our. We would like to accomplish a lot. We would like to transform the whole city in just a couple of weeks. We know that can't be done, but we are taking, solid steps so that those steps are not then taken back in the next administration. So I'm sure that by being in this work group and by sharing these experiences, we can learn from each other. We have so much to learn from Oslo. I know that Oslo is now talking about trying driverless buses. Well, we're working on improving our bus network. But once again, it's one step at a time. We're taking solid steps, and we want to improve the quality of life of people here in the metro area of Guadalajara. Thank you.
Thank you, Saul. So just to share with everyone that's watching us, in the next couple of years, ITF wants to explore some new topics for the Safer City Streets. We want to understand if there are links that exist, for instance, between road safety agendas and other policies, in particular sustainability, health, inclusion. So that's why we are also asking those type of questions to our speakers. I think we have a very good opportunity to start this discussion today. I would like to jump into a very important topic that Alex already shared in his slides, that is about safety in cycling. And then I would like to ask Liliana to share some more details with us, because we saw that Vancouver appears as one of the safest cities to ride a bike. Not only cycling deaths are rare in Vancouver, but also bicycle traffic is growing. So Liliana, how did you manage to make cycling safe and also very attractive to your residents?
Thank you for the question. We have done a lot of work. And again, since the 90s, we started with creating a network of residential bikeways on our smaller streets. This was shared with vehicles, and this was what we had as the baseline. And then in the 2000s, we started to look at, okay, now we want to, do protected bike lanes and treat all ages and abilities bike lanes, and we started to do that on the downtown and on the main arterials, where we recognized that cyclists, maybe they didn't want to go to a residential road, they wanted to be on the front of the commercial, and that was important to them. So we started to explore all of that. So a lot of work on creating all that infrastructure was done, and it was very controversial work that included reallocation of space from vehicles to bikes, a lot of parking removed in front of businesses. So there were a lot of challenging conversations until this became something that was more normalized. And it was typical to see a lot of protected or designated facilities. And then in 2017, we launched our Aaa Guidelines to help guide, okay, what does that mean to have a facility that's for all ages and abilities. And some of the core components that we have on that are having low vehicle volume, so less than 500 vehicles a day, provide that level of comfort. So that'll be, if you're on an arterial, a protected facility. If you're on a lower volume street, it's a residential bikeway that's shared, and then, or a shared off the road pathway. Another key component was keeping speeds low through traffic calming, as well as keep grades low as possible. So try, if you're doing a new bike lane, try to make it somewhere that's not steep, which is hard in Vancouver. We have a lot of steep roads. Looking at safe passing distances and the balance between having parking and not having parking, because that also influences speeds, and a lot of work in looking at trying to address conflicts to make sure that there's the least conflicts with vehicles or other road users, separating people walking from cycling. We're currently having 8.8% of our residents traveling by bike for general trips, and 13% people cycling to work, and 25% of our cycling network is AAA. So that's where we're at. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's pretty great, and it helps with having those safety numbers, because the mode share has significantly increased. We've observed that our serious injury rate has been decreasing over the last 5 years because of that increase in cycling trips. And as you say, traffic fatalities are very rare in Vancouver. So we're very happy about that.
That's very good. I would like to ask you, do you know how much women cycle in Vancouver? Because we see in many parts of the world that men and women does not cycle on the same rates. The fear of crashes is something that has a big influence for women to decide to cycle. So do you have any data and insight from that from Vancouver?
Yep. So we have an initiative that we have is the panel survey. So we survey 2,500 residents here in Vancouver to understand what mode they use typically, and they do a little bit trip diary for 1 day, so we understand what they do typically on a day. And from there, we've learned that there's more males than females cycling. So for every 2 males, there's 1 female cycling. However, it's always been that rate since 2013 when we started the panel survey. So but the percentage has increasing. So right now we have 11% of the male trips are by bike, and for women is 7%. So there is a difference, and women tend to walk way more and take more transit and drive less. But still, the number of trips has been increasing. So I think when we started in 2013, the number of females watched lower. I think it was 3%. So it keeps growing and growing. But the proportion is 2 to 1.
Thank you. So continue on cycling. Saul, I know that you are also making a lot of efforts to promote cycling in Guadalajara. Can you share with us what are the keys to make cycling safe? And for instance, is there any relation to speed management or other actions you've been taking?
Okay, so let me continue by taking my comment, the last comment on the mobility agenda coordination, because as I said before, all of the agencies and the levels that are working together into this agenda, municipalities are doing their part of the job, the state as well. So we consider all of the different cycles of, let's say, the dynamics in mobility, considering the planning agencies, the transport secretary, the metropolitan agency, which is IMEPLAN, and also the municipal bodies. The municipal bodies, or there are new mobility agencies within these municipal bodies, and for the last 6 years they have been implementing some measures. For example, low speed zones, and they have been they have taken into consideration the non-motorized plan, which was set up or was designed back in 2007. And from there on, they have been very dedicated into construction this cycle network. If we think about the operation and regulation, we have the Transport Secretary, the Traffic Police, and the Metro Infrastructure Agency, who have then again, for example, the agency in charge of operating and maintaining those bicycle lanes is the Metro Infrastructure Agency, AMIM, as we know it in Spanish. And they have been either building new bike lanes or maintaining the bike lanes. When we think about, as I said before, the growing the cycling infrastructure, the existing pandemic has created a great opportunity for to provide safer infrastructure for cyclists, and also for people who sought to reduce exposition to COVID-19. Guadalajara and Zapopan, they both built and are still building emerging bike lanes that will become fixed bike lanes. They will not be taken down once the pandemic is over, which is a very important news. Now, from behalf of the state, during this year, 2020, the budget for cycling infrastructure has allowed us to build 100 kilometers to safe, protected, and comfortable bike lanes. We know that it's not only to build whatever bike lane we can, but we want to keep them safe. Otherwise, we wouldn't be fostering cycling, right? This includes the construction of a bike lane along the ring road, which is called Periférico. I don't know if you have heard of, where the largest BRT in Latin America is being built right now. It's been under construction for the last year and will be operational hopefully in the beginning of 2022 when you guys come to Guadalajara. As for speed management, we know for a fact, I've been a cyclist since I was 9 years old. And speed is the main cause of fear for people to ride their bikes. So in the last few years, we have implemented some speed management strategies, such as the creation, as I said before, of low speed zones, mainly in the core municipal downtown areas, and also automatic speed controls, the speed cameras, or as they call it in Bogota, the live cameras. And now we're implementing a new intelligent traffic light system. This will allow us to regulate speed at specific, specific time frames, where we know that we have more pedestrians, more cyclists driving their bikes. Now, the biggest challenge yet to be achieved is to lower the speeds in the urban areas. The highest rates are located in roads that now have a speed limit of 80 kilometers an hour. The construction of the BRT will bring us the opportunity to discuss this issue, so that by design, the road can become an icon for comprehensive territorial management that can include green infrastructure, active mobility, land management, safe public transport, and also greater accessibility and connectivity. We are well aware that the major contributor for serious injuries and deaths is high speed. In this sense, this type of seminars provide us the opportunity to learn from other cities that have solved this issue. We know that it's not a technical issue, but rather a communication one. Now, from the Secretary of Transport itself, even though one death is too many, we have decreased the amounts of deaths in which public transport has participated. We have followed Transport for London, who have taken a comprehensive planning to reducing deaths. We admire Transport for London. And for example, in 2013, public transport was accountable for 50 fatalities in the metro area. 8 of them were cyclists. During 2019, we reduced it to 30 deaths. And this year, we have, the tendency is slowing a little bit more, about 11.5%. We have right now 23 fatalities, in which 4 of them were cyclists. Now, the ultimate goal is achieving 0 deaths. But so far, in 2 years, we have achieved modifying the one man, one bus scheme by creating bus companies. We know that this will take some time in completing its transformation, but it was one step that we needed to take. And we invite many cities who have not taken it. We know that the cities in Europe, this problem was solved years before. But for Latin America, for example, this is an issue in many mid-sized cities and also metro areas. The second achievement was we started a bus fleet renewal, in which our goal is to achieve reducing the blind spots. That has been one of the first causes of deaths, as I said before, in which public transport is accountable. So those are our main activities in the metro area of Guadalajara.
Thank you. So that's very nice to have city representatives from different cities that are in different stages in this path to achieve a Vision Zero. But I would like now to call Pedro for this conversation, because we heard a lot from the cities, but I would like also to hear your opinion, Pedro, because you are part of the Polis network, so you engage with a lot of cities. So in your opinion, do you see that cities are moving in the same direction to achieve safety in cycling? Do you see a common trend of investing in infrastructure, for instance, or do you see different strategies being adopted elsewhere? And finally, taking all that into consideration, what do you think works best?
Easy question. Well, thank you very much for having me here. It's quite an honor to share the screen with these experts. Well, allow me to say this first. I mean, number one, what hasn't changed? There's a lot of talk. Fortunately, there are more people talking about cycling and investing in cycling and seriously talking about cycling safety. What has not changed is there are still very few people paying attention to pedestrian safety and willing to invest in pedestrian safety. And pedestrians are still the forgotten element of the transport chain. Interestingly, obviously, they're the most basic building element of the transport chain. I would just like to point out, first of all, that often the fact that the elderly people are disproportionately affected by road crashes, and low-income people are disproportionately affected by road crashes. And in richer countries, children aren't disproportionately affected by road crashes because they're just closed inside their homes or inside their schools and not allowed to roam freely through their city streets. And so this is one question. And another question about picking up on something that Saul mentioned. It is obviously critical if we want to have a substantive and fast shift to sustainable urban mobility to occur, if it's essential to think about the safety and the convenience of the pedestrian network, because public transport passengers are pedestrians, and pedestrians are public transport, potentially many of them are public transport passengers. And if we don't improve conditions for pedestrians, the experience of using public transport will remain horrible. Even if we put Wi-Fi and air conditioning and if we buy new buses, it's still going to be a horrible experience. Because I remember from when I did research in my own city with my team, basically around, this probably does not apply for longer commuting trips, but for many trips that use public transport, more than half the time the passenger is either walking or waiting at the bus stop. So we can no longer ignore or the plight of the pedestrians and what we need to do about them. A second issue would be that this is sharing for many colleagues who are out there from Latino America and from Europe. That learning about best practices help. But I would also encourage you to learn more about to be alert to the fact that, to something that affected me a lot when I was a city official. It's that, you watch the webinars, you read the success stories, and you come out thinking, man, I'm the problem. The other guys are so great, and it's my culture or it's my city. It'll never work here because it's working for the others. It's not working here. Well, I'm sure that both Saul and Maya and Liliana could share with everybody, the difficulties that they also face. These success stories are full of drama as well. There are difficulties that they had to overcome. There are difficulties that they have not overcome yet. And learning about these difficulties is very, very useful. And finally, about cycling in bike lanes, just maybe a bit of a polemic. Obviously, we all agree that segregated bike lanes are very important and they can be very useful, obviously for increasing the amount of cycling, for increasing the safety of cyclists, and for increasing the visibility of this shift towards sustainable urban mobility. But, segregated bike lanes aren't necessarily the best measure everywhere for advancing cycling. We have to be careful to not use segregated bike lanes a bit like this man who has a hammer in his hand and everything looks like a nail, like a universal solution. What we need is a cyclable city where it is safe and convenient to cycle everywhere And I mean, except motorways and highways, anywhere where the traffic code allows for cycling, it must be safe and convenient to cycle there. And so we cannot have segregated bike lanes on every street. We can, however, have measures that force drivers to drive slower and to pay attention to cyclists. And it's very important to be aware of, very quickly, like 5 perverse effects of this fixation on segregated bike lanes. I mean, number one, because it encourages often elected officials who aren't very familiar with sustainable mobility, who just want to show that they're doing something. It encourages them to put segregated bike lanes where it's easy, not necessarily where they're most needed, including arterials and access for commuting. Number two, because it encourages a focus on one key performance indicator, which is kilometers, and not necessarily on the safety, on the usability, on the connectivity of the network. And when we talk about safety, I would point out that it is critical to ensure safety at the intersections. And when we lay out kilometers and kilometers of bike lanes, we must ensure safety at the intersections. And what we often see in many examples is that the intersections just remain the same, and that can happen. Thirdly, we cannot forget other essential aspects about that are necessary to increase cycling and cycling safety. I mean, but to increase cycling, we need bike parking, including in many dense residential areas where people cannot just carry the bike up to their apartments. So bike lanes just don't solve that. We also need that finally, to be able to understand that maybe segregated bike lanes can solve an important problem in several places. They do, but then what about the other needs? We also need bus lanes. We also need parking for deliveries, so that delivery trucks aren't parking on the crosswalks, on the sidewalks, or on the bus lanes. In the future, we may need specific lanes for autonomous vehicles. Now, during the COVID crisis, we need many parking spaces that are often being converted into bike lanes. Good, but they are also needed for terraces, for restaurants and cafes. And so I would say in like 90%, or at least in many cities, in around 80% of the street network, we just cannot carve it to put a bike lane everywhere. What we have, the real challenge, is to, number one, to increase bike traffic across the city and in commuting lines. And also, the other challenge is to make it easy and safe and convenient to cycle in residential areas. And just a final word, in residential areas, bringing the speeds down can make the whole area cyclable. And it's something that is much easier to sell to residents because, number one, it doesn't start by taking their parking places away. And it can make it safer for everybody to cycle everywhere. And who doesn't want slow speeds in his or her own street? So, there's a sea of opportunities there. Finished.
Thank you very much, Pedro. You mentioned so many important points that I want to go back. But first of all, I think we can maybe close this block of cycling, inviting Maya also to comment on that, because Oslo was considered an emerging bicycle city where people were cycling more and more and safely. So taking in consideration all these important comments Pedro just did, Maya, can you comment a little bit on how is cycling in Oslo?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, wow, so many interesting points came up. Well, of course, building infrastructure is key, of course, and also being a winter city like Oslo, we do quite a lot now on actually snow plowing this infrastructure during the winter to make sure that people are able to, over time, develop this peculiar interest for riding your bike in the middle of the winter, which is, attacking that key time in the year when we do have some air quality difficulties. So I was thinking a little bit about who's really cycling in Oslo, and I guess if you asked me like 5 or 10 years ago, I would say, well, it's a male. He's like 40 to 60. He has this outdoorsy interests, and every morning he will break his own world record on the way to work. But actually that has changed now, and over the last 4 years we see that female cyclists are taking their bike and using it, and we are now approximately 50-50 female and male cyclists. We do also have the elder population is a little bit lower in their use of bike, but I think that might change with increasing sales of electric bikes that are at least going off the charts in Oslo. I would like to mention a group that's a little bit of a challenge for us. It's actually the students. Like several of you, I guess, we do have a big group of young people coming to Oslo to study every year, and I think maybe the combination of, you have this urban image of public transport and traveling around with your friends, and the fact that we do have a really affordable and available public transport system network that's especially good for people living in central areas. So that has given us quite a low share of biking in this group. So we have done quite a few like marketing activities towards this group, things like, easy things like establishing a bike fix cafe at the university. We've arranged for affordable used bikes to be sold, and I think of course now all the students are sadly sitting at home as well as the rest of us, but I do hope that these activities over time will make also this group open for that cycling in Oslo can be a good solution. I would just like to say that well, in traffic safety, as all of you know, of course, the structural work that gives us a traffic system that you can expect the same solution all the time is really important. And I think to comment on a little bit of what Pedro said, that we in Oslo we need to take that challenge to improve our research on these new solutions that are typically design solutions connected to bike lanes, because it's a lot we don't know about, especially how pedestrians and cyclists meet or should meet at different designs. And to give good traffic safety advice, both to our own organization and to other private planning companies in Oslo, we do need to step up to find out what kind of situations we can expect with the different solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Time is going very fast. We have 15 minutes left. So I would like to call my colleague Alex to bring some questions from the public. I can see we received a lot of them. Alex, please.
Rafaela, thank you. Yes, we've got very interesting question. I'll start with one from Dovile at the European Transport Safety Council. It's to all panelists who want to intervene. What made road safety become a political priority in your city? Who would like to start? Liliana.
For us, what happened is we have this citizen committee. It's called the Active Transportation Policy Council. And back then we were reviewing the Transportation 2040 plan. We had that the goal of 2/3 trips by 2040. And many of those members of this committee, which met monthly, is a very serious committee. You have to come every month and you have to apply to be in it, and you have to, have a keen interest in transportation. They brought up Vision Zero and how they wanted us to add to a plan the target of 0 traffic-related fatalities when staff presented. So that's how it started for us. And that was reviewed by staff. And then we adopted that target on the Transportation 2040 plan. So that was the first step, because it was only traffic-related fatalities. And then later on, they keep pushing. This committee, they're very knowledgeable. They do a lot of research, and they have these. They're very generous with their time, so they will do a lot of these compilations of what other cities were doing and how do we do to add serious injuries. Our issue was that we didn't have that data. We only had, we have these provincial insurance corporation, and when they give us the collision data, it just says injuries. You don't know if it was a serious injury, a minor injury, what was it, so we couldn't track it. So that was why we couldn't adopt it. So we had a partnership with the health professionals, and we got access to hospital data to try to get those numbers. And so we were able to, in 2016, to add the second piece. So that's how it worked for Vancouver. That's a very unique case, I would say.
Thank you, Liliana. So citizen engagement in Vancouver. Anybody else? Maya, and then Saul.
Yes, thank you. Well, in the bigger picture, I would say that traffic safety, like this history of traffic safety in Norway, might start with women coming into politics in the 70s, and engaging in different questions than other people had before them, and being more focused on their local, like their neighborhoods, their children, school routes and stuff like that. And I think that is still today quite influential at the type of traffic safety work that we do. So we're really lucky to have a strong focus on traffic safety from the National Public Roads Administration. They have this strategic plan for us on a national level, and basically all our activities are building up towards delivering on the zero vision. So so that's probably a lot of answers. Right now, I would say the answer is probably e-scooters. We have a big focus on traffic safety because of this new mobility coming in and disturbing the way the traffic flow works in Oslo. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. It's interesting. Women in politics, how much they can change the world. Saul, you wanted to add something?
Yes, in our case, I would say that it's the participation, the active participation of activists and experts as public officials. For example, Patricia Martinez, the head of the territorial management coordination in the state cabinet, 13 years ago was fighting to promote cycling. She was painting, bike lanes where the authority wouldn't want to set up a bike lane. Mario Silva, the head of the planning agency, the Planning Metropolitan Agency, was himself an activist in terms of air quality, in terms of climate change 13, 15 years ago. Myself, I was an activist at WRI Mexico. I was the head of the road safety management, and I was also involved in terms of in projects that involved air quality and climate change. And the list goes forth. For example, Jesus Soto Morfin, who is now the head of the mobility agency within the municipality of Zapopan was 13, 15 years ago fighting to, stop the spread of vehicle infrastructure. He was promoting cycling as well. He's now doing it from the municipality of Zapopan and so forth. So I can say that the decision, from some activists to become part of the government, that has been a main, the main, let's say, success in taking road safety with a higher hierarchy in terms of the public agenda.
May I add a comment?
Yes,
yeah, a very quick comment. Yeah, I mean, why don't we ask the question the other way? I mean, if the lack of road safety is something that kills our parents and our children, and really is an utter failure of our transport system, how come it is not a political priority in more cities? I mean, furthermore, I mean, if we think that it affects children who don't have a voice in political life, or the elderly, or populations with lower income, or it affects also women disproportionately, then is like the lack of road safety an indicator for let's say a lack of democratic transport planning? I know this might sound polemic, but if we think about it for a second, how come this basic need and concern of the population isn't being attended by transport planning and management in everyday operations? So on the one hand, it's obviously very important to make sure the population is heard, and these concerns by the population and by activists like Saul was and others, that they have a way channeling them to the discussion of urban mobility, and not just in some ceremonial occasions every year where we're all sorry for those who are dead, just really channel them to everyday decision making, and also to kind of overcome this sense of inevitability that road fatalities are this cultural thing. There's nothing you can do about it, and it's our responsibility as transport specialists to educate and empower the population, and also many urban advocates and activists who really want to do something for sustainable mobility, but aren't really educated enough about the true possibilities of road safety. So yeah, so ask why not.
Saul?
I just want to add that while in different forums and panels, I've seen that we say, what, we know what to do, but we just need the political or politicians to take those decisions. Some decision makers do not understand yet the complexity of road safety. The trend is still to try to educate road users so that they don't make mistakes. And instead of working in terms of safe system, they tend to address it with let's control road users who behave bad by giving them tickets from behalf of the traffic police, and let's educate road users so that pedestrians do not cross where they're not intended to cross. So I believe that this trend needs to be modified. It's been done from the inside, but we must convince the head, the politicians, that road safety it's a great problem that considers a lot of economic results that we're not addressing.
Thank you, Saul. It's really easy indeed for political leaders to blame the user, to blame the driver for not looking, to blame the pedestrian for not looking, and we cannot deliver Vision Zero if we still focus on blaming the victim or education alone. Maya had something to add. Maya.
I thought, yeah. I'm sorry, I just want one more comment on that, because I think, the nature of the city is to be a big, like a collection of needs and wants and not in my backyard thoughts. And I think that is maybe part of the explanation why this can happen, because we all want a speed bump in my street, but I would like to, you know, pick up my kids from school really fast. So I think that is we're kind of put up against each other in this need for safe streets, not for one neighborhood or one street, but for everyone. And I think realizing that sustainable transport is a really important part of that solution is the key. Thank you.
Maya, please keep the mic open for a second, because there's a question really close to what you just talked about. It's raised by Emma from the UK. She asks about the risk of a cultural war when local authorities take action, when they remove parking, when they close down shortcuts. So the question for Emma is how do you prevent conflicts from arising in the community when you take action?
Well, I think working with traffic safety and sustainable transport, it has quite a high conflict level and a very high level of interest for every citizens in our town, and we do have some years behind us, I hope, that have been quite a high level of conflict locally. I think as you provide results of this change, you know, the nicer parts of towns, the park that you actually will have room for, you win over a couple of people every time, and I do think that we have brave and brave politicians that are able to stand tall in the discussion that comes after we do something until it kind of cools down a bit, and if it's one thing that COVID has shown us is it is that people are really able to change their habits. And that is just to steady on, structurally working towards this goal, I guess.
Thank you. On those wise words, I'm afraid I will have to hand over back to Rafaela, because we've reached nearly the end of this event.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, I am afraid our time is up. I would like to continue this conversation. We had so much more to ask you, but I think we need to reschedule a new opportunity. So I would like to thank you all for taking your time to share your experience with us. I would like to invite you all once again to read ITF's new report called Monitoring Progress in Urban Road Safety. I would like also to remember you that we already had a series of 3 webinars in the past months, and we debated a lot of topics on road safety. These webinars, they were based in another report we just launched that is called Best Practice for Urban Road Safety. So if you missed these webinars, you can watch them in our YouTube channel. The link is on the chat. And I hope we can see you all again next year for more webinars. Pedro, you gave a very interesting idea. Maybe we can schedule a webinar to debate challenges and failures and things that didn't work out. So thank you for this very good comment and idea. And if your city wants to become a member of the Safer City Streets Network, please contact us. The details of Alex and me are available on the ITF website. And that's it for today. Thank you all for joining, and have a very nice end of the day.
Bye.